Hi, everybody. My name is Suzanne Shanahan here at the Keenan Institute for Ethics at Duke, and I'm delighted to welcome you to week 7 of Reimagining the World Together, How Friendship Matters for Our Future. For those new to the conversation, this series brings together friends and colleagues, often unlikely duos, to share how their relationship has shaped their lives, their work, their commitments. The goal is to illuminate the transformative power of friendship. Reimagining the World Together is part of the Purpose Project here at Duke, an effort co-sponsored by the Keenan Institute, Duke Divinity, and the Office of Undergraduate Education. It is funded by the Duke Endowment. The Purpose Project is really about exploring questions of purpose and meaning in one's life. We hope to make those questions central to the Duke experience. This week, we have a special treat for everyone. We will have a conversation led by the Atlantic editor and journalist Julie Beck. Julie has covered science, technology, and health before becoming the editor of the family section in 2019. The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, has said of Julie that she is deeply creative, funny, and has both a strong magazine sensibility and an intuitive understanding of the best sorts of internet weirdness. Good for you, Julie. Among the projects Julie has led at the Atlantic is the Friendship Files, a weekly series of interviews with sets of friends around the world exploring the intimate and indelible nature of friendships. Since 2019, when she launched this series, Julie has conducted more than 60 interviews with 2 or more friends. Clearly, the relationship between our own series and Julie's is clear. Today, we are going to have a repeat of one of her more recent conversations with Aminatou Sow and Anne Friedman. Sow is a writer, podcast host, and co-founder of Tech Lady Mafia, a network she runs with Erie Meyer that aims to boost women on the tech world ladder. Sow was born in Guinea and grew up in Nigeria, Belgium, and France as the daughter of diplomat parents. Anne Friedman is a journalist, essayist, pie chart artist, which I'm dying to know what that is, and media entrepreneur. Anne writes about gender, politics, and social issues. She sends a popular weekly email newsletter to 49,000 subscribers. Together, they host Call Your Girlfriend, and the duo sold out a nationwide tour last year. They are also authors of the best-selling book, Big Friendship, How We Keep Each Other Close. And I would note in week 7, this is the first time that our guests actually had intertwined bios in such a significant way. There's so many dimensions of this relationship that I absolutely love, whether it's that they first connected over Gossip Girl or have matching tattoos. I think I'm also really struck by an articulation of friendship as something being with the person you want to spend your last days of life with. So from the trivial to the more serious, I think it'll be just a great opportunity for us to hear from them. For me personally, having spent this long, strange summer watching every single episode of Gossip Girl with my teenage daughters, but also having devoured their book when it first came out with my oldest daughter on one of our binge reading all-nighters, I'm just super, super excited to hear what they have to say in this conversation. I think it's also our very first pair that we've brought together who have so explicitly thought, talked, and written about what friendship means to them. So I think this will be a really interesting contrast to some of our other conversations, but hopefully just as meaningful. For me, each of these conversations offers a particular nugget or insight, and at some point, usually many points in the conversation, I think to myself, geez, I wish I had a friend just like that. So I'm looking forward to hearing that from both of them today. A brief note on logistics. This is a Zoom adventure, as so many things lately, and with Zoom, there are often challenges. Please note that we have a whole host of people in the backstage, ready to jump in should there be technical difficulties. Also, please note to submit your questions through the Q&A. Julie will begin going through those questions at about 6:05. And with that, I'm delighted to turn it over to Julie for what promises to be a fabulous conversation. Have fun, guys.
Thanks, Suzanne. And hi, Aminatou and Anne. I'm really excited to talk to you guys more about friendship. So I received some reliable intel that these panels always start with the moderator asking, how did you meet? And I want us to be different and memorable. So I'm going to ask the opposite question, which is, how did you almost break up? And we'll start there and go backwards.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I just want the record to reflect that Gossip Girl is not a show that holds up, or that when we were watching it, we thought was good at the time. I just always want to put that on the table. To answer your question, I mean, that is like, I'm glad that you're asking that first, because it was really important to us when we were writing our book to start in a place where, you know, friendship is difficult and complicated, because so much of the emphasis that's paid onto friendship is really, you know, it's romanticized in the way that everyone always shares the highlight reel, but the truth of friendship is that it's hard and complicated, like any really intimate and intense family bond that you can have. And, you know, for Anne and I, there was not like some big catalyzing incident, someone like misbehaved in a, you know, in a very particular way, but over the course of a couple of years, we just really started missing each other, and we work with each other. So we, you know, we're in contact in some way, shape, or form every day. And it took us a really long time to realize that actually, oh, the universe of things that we talk about has dwindled so much that work is the only safe thing to talk about at this point. Like, we were not telling each other about, you know, very mundane and very big developments in our lives. And so we had like a really particular bound that, you know, in romantic relationships, the shorthand really is we were growing apart. And that is exactly what happened with us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think everyone intuitively understands, right, that like a romantic breakup or becoming estranged from your parents is something that totally shifts your world and can really upend your life. But when you break up with a friend, or more often it's not as discreet as that, but maybe just fading out of a friendship without really talking about it, the sense is like, oh, that's sad, but it doesn't really change your life. And that really would not have been the case for you two, because your friendship is so embedded in your life and in your work. So I'm curious, like, just talk a little bit about the significance of what a breakup would have meant for you.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it not being world changing to have a friendship end, because I think that's only true of really more like an acquaintance type friendship, or a friendship that really hasn't been like a very intimate relationship for a long time. I think most friendships that end, if they ever have been a very close relationship, are painful and are life changing. And that was something that, you know, therapists and professionals told us too, not just our therapists, we can talk about that later, but like in the world experts, you know, saying that this was something that they heard from people again and again. So I think that's important to say right off the bat. And that friendships ending really, not just in our case, because we, you know, work together and collaborate together, but in almost every situation, it's a really, really difficult thing when a friendship ends. You don't have that, but we can still be friends, lie to tell each other to fall back on. It really does feel like the end. In our case, I think that there is the fact that we were collaborators, and we would have to we'd have to make a choice related to that if our friendship didn't continue. Like, would we still work together, but like explicitly not be friends, or would we stop working together? You know, it prompted a whole other set of questions, I think, as we thought about the possibility of our friendship ending. There was also the fact that by that point, you know, we'd been friends for half a decade, I think. We had a ton of people in common. We were pretty much guaranteed to continue running into each other, to see each other at like weddings, or, you know, when we had friends in common who celebrated some other kind of milestone. And so the idea that our friendship was ending or could end, we knew that wouldn't mean we just wouldn't see each other again. There would kind of always be this reminder of what we had lost. And And, and really at the heart of it, I think we both just wanted to understand what had happened. We had been so close for so many years, and it had always felt very easy. And so there was this confusion about why it wasn't working. And I think, like, as we sat down to write this book and really try to explain why we invested so much time and energy and literal dollars in saving our friendship, it comes down to that. It's like we were kind of confused. We wanted to figure it out, like what had gone wrong.
Yeah, I think this gets into the concept of big friendship a little bit, which is the clever pivot I just did to the name of your book. But the idea that losing a friendship like this really would be earth-shattering. So to just get the definitional question out of the way, what is a big friendship as you guys define it?
We really wanted to distinguish big friendship from all other forms of friendship, because friendship is a bond that is very it is like very loosely defined. Like you have Facebook friends, you have the friends that your parents like introduced you to when you were a kid, you have the people that you work with. But the tier that we are talking about when we talk about big friendship is the kind of friendship that is very active, a friendship where you are choosing to say, that you want this relationship to be rooted in the future, and that this is a person you want to know for a long time, and someone who you are, continuously opting into knowing. And we know, like we are each other's big friend, quote unquote, but we also, this is a tier of friendship that we recognize for a lot of people is there, but no one had ever really put a vocabulary for. What is someone who you are just like very intricately, like whose life you are really intricately woven into. And, like ultimately when we think about the last days of our lives, or really down the really down the road many decades from now, this is the kind of friend that we still want to know, not because we know them by circumstance, but because we have chosen to know them for that long.
Mm-hmm. I think we've talked a good amount about just like lexicons or vocabulary of friendship, or however you want to put it. And it is interesting that friend is like this big umbrella term that does encompass, your little league teammate who you see his posts on Facebook, and like something as big and deep as a big friendship. So I guess I'm curious, have you found in your personal friendship, whether it's this one or other ones, that lack of vocabulary has an effect on how you think about friendships or how you relate to people?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think we're both word nerds. We both think it matters what you call someone that you're in a relationship with. And it's not just about the terminology, it's about all the things that go along with it. Like if the word friend is so broad as to be meaningless, then it's really hard to define expectations for what you need to do to show up for each other. And sometimes that can be really freeing, like it's a relationship that can kind of expand and contract depending on what's changing in both of your lives. But other times it can be really difficult and create, two different sets of expectations about what you need from the friendship. And, for us, putting a language around big friendship was sort of like saying, okay, we're actually talking about not just a specific type of friendship, like it's a passive status, but like we're also talking about things that you do to remain in that kind of friendship. The rituals you have together, the ways you assure each other that you want to be there for each other for the long term, the kind of emotional openness and transparency you have. All of these things are, not part of the literal definition, but I think it was important for us to define a little bit what made a friendship like ours and like some other friendships we've had different. And that's a way that we give respect and weight to relationships. I mean, it's a reason why a term like, husband, wife, mother, father, like the terms that we have for other important relationships are such easy shorthands. We really want to start adopting more of that shorthand for close long-term friendship.
Do you think that there is less of a mutually understood shorthand for friendship, for the word friend, as opposed to the word husband or wife?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think that it is the weight of, you know, the terms that we give to these other relationships are also generally backed up with some sort of legal status, you know? So someone knows what you mean when you say the distinction between like, oh, this person is my, you know, like boyfriend or girlfriend versus my husband or my wife, or even versus my partner, or we understand, like, you are really signaling something there, you know? And I think that with friend, that is not always true. And you know, and I think that that also contributes to, you know, a lot of these friendship breakdowns. Friendship is the one kind of intense relationship you can have with someone where you never really have to determine or you know, have a serious conversation about what you mean to each other, or what kind of, you know, like what life plans you have with each other. And it can be built on just so many assumptions because we are not socialized to really have these same conversations with friends, and they do tend to feel very risky. It you know, if you're in a romantic relationship with someone, or you are in, you know, you have like a familial bond with someone, there are cultural scripts for how you navigate difficulty, or, you know, like there are just things that you can access to say, oh, like you're my sibling, you're not going anywhere, or you are, you know, or you have a disagreement with your spouse, and you still know that that is a normal thing to have, and it doesn't mean that that person is going to run out on you. Whereas in friendship, because we are not practiced at having these conversations, it feels incredibly risky to say, hi, I don't feel great in this friendship right now. You know, like I will confess that for myself, up until very recently, anytime I heard that, I was like, great, the friendship's over. One person's not happy. We're done here. The idea that friendship, you know, is a kind of relationship that will encounter strife that you can work on, that was a very foreign concept to me, because I was just not socialized to know that.
Yeah, there are many things that I'm going to follow up on in that at some point. But to start, I think it's interesting. So we start at the level of the word, right? Like there's ambiguity in the word choice, what the word friend means, what, you know, what is a big friendship versus an acquaintanceship. And then, like you said, then there's also ambiguity on the level of the script for how does this relationship go? Even to the point of when a friendship is breaking up or something, there's not, like you said, there's not a clear moment that you can always point to say like, oh, something was wrong, some like boundary was violated. It's like, sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's a weird fade out and you feel the vibes are bad, but you don't know what to do. And so, yeah, I'm curious how that played out with you guys not having something that you can point to, or a communally understood script for what is happening here.
Well, I think we both experienced that period of our friendship as a really lonely one, because we are people who told ourselves that gossiping is always bad, and we didn't want to talk to our mutual friends about it and have it look like we were, you know, saying something catty about the other person. We really didn't talk to anyone about what was happening between us. And then what happened there is, instead of talking to each other or to someone else who might encourage us to talk to each other, we were just like in our own heads and trying to make meaning of the other person's actions without ever actually checking it with them. And so, you know, because it was all small stuff, it wasn't like something so big that we knew we had to address it, or, you know, we couldn't walk away from it or ignore it or tell ourselves a story about it. It became something that was, you know, we were really out of alignment about. One person would be like, okay, I'm working on this week and I can't seem to get through to her. The other person would be oblivious and not even know that their friend was trying to get through, you know? It was really, you know, and we could both feel that it wasn't good, you know, like I think there was this like pervasive icky feeling that eventually we were able to articulate to each other and say like, yeah, does this feel bad to you? It doesn't feel great to me. But by that point, we were really out of practice in talking to each other. You know, by the time that we stopped noticing it and feeling bad alone and started having a conversation, it felt really difficult to just immediately start sharing ourselves again. Like more parts of our friendship had broken down. And I think that you know, it's interesting going back to what you said about language, like because we couldn't identify a thing and have a language for what was wrong between us, we thought it should just be easy to fix. And it was not. It was not super easy to just like snap our fingers and say we're friends again because we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think everyone's probably curious about friend therapy, so I'm going to go to that now. But a pretty significant portion of your book is dedicated to the work you did to kind of repair the big friendship, therapy being one part of that. So could you just walk us through a little bit, like what led to the decision to go to therapy together, and then to whatever degree you're comfortable sharing, you know, what were some of the things that you kind of realized through that process?
Yeah, you know, we reached the point where we were both finally on the same page about the fact that the friendship sucked. There was just there's not a more elegant way to put that. We were both not happy. It wasn't going well. And, you know, but there's something like really clarifying about that, because now the question is not like, oh, is this person feel as uncomfortable as I feel? It's just like, okay, great. Like nobody is happy. Where do you go from here? And, you know, and in a lot of like clumsy ways, we tried to reconnect. We went on this, really, you know, I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was terrible, truly. You know, like went on a couples retreat where we thought that just being in a beautiful place together for 3 days, that would just close the gap of, you know, barely speaking to each other for years. I want to go back to those women and say, just like remind them how foolish they were. But, you know, we truly, like, going back to, you know, like using the word script, we did not have a repair script. And so we tried to do that and that didn't work. You know, and we knew that something had to shift. And I think that the thing that probably like facilitated all of this for us is, again, because we are collaborators, we are forced to communicate with each other in some, you know, way, shape, or form. And we got this, we were basically having a conversation about whether we could take on a new project. And in having that conversation, had to confront the fact that we, you know, there was just no way that we could add one more thing to our plate because we were not comfortable working with each other as it was. And, you know, and I think that the thing that really brought into focus for us is that because we were collaborators, you know, we had a sense of, okay, if you're a co-founder or you work together, there is, you know, there are resources that you can access there. You can get some coaching, or you can, you know, or we had heard of this like prominent example of 2 male co-founders who had gone to therapy. And so it did not sound so weird. But I don't know that if we, you know, if we did not work together, I don't know that that would have come as quickly to us as it did. And, you know, and I think that once we realized that what was really going on was that we were just not able to communicate with each other, you know, and we are 2 people, like Anne said, like we're big word nerds. We like to be fully self-expressed with each other. And once we both realized that that was not happening, the question was less, oh, how do we solve this friendship? But more, oh, is there some kind of person that can mediate a conversation between the 2 of us? Because maybe having, you know, introducing like a impartial third party would be helpful. And so the minute that we were locked on that, we started asking, like very discreetly asking our friends who we knew had like gone to couples therapy specifically, if they had recommendations for a couples counselor. We were pretty set that we did not want some sort of business coach, because our business was actually doing really well, and that was not the point of what we were trying to do. And, you know, and it was an awkward and very weird period. There was no like directory for friendship therapists. So even knowing, you know, what kind of criteria or guidelines we had for this person was hard. And I say this as someone who's been in individual therapy for a long time. So we found someone that we thought we wanted to work with for a while, and we ended up working with him for a little bit. And it was not really going well, the working with him, but it was another indication to us that maybe our friendship could be saved, that we were on the same page about firing him. Like, great, like, can't talk to each other, but we know that this is not working, so we're gonna fire this person and we're gonna start over. So that was that to me was like very heartening. It was like, right, we still make good decisions together, even though this is not going well. You know, and I think that everything about the process of finding a therapist, even if you are, you know, you're going through a rough time, I think tells you a lot about the other person's willingness to show up for the process, because we did not have a scenario where one of us did all of that work. You know, we gave each other some homework that was, come back next week with 3 recommendations, tell me why or why not you want to work with this person. And I think that spirit of just, you know, equally like sharing the burden of finding the person was important. It is also a literal financial investment in our relationship. Therapy is very expensive, it turns out, especially couples therapy. And, you know, it still feels like a very weird thing to say that we did. We don't really, you know, like, we didn't tell anyone really at the time that we were doing it. And even finding a professional that would work with us when we eventually settled on the therapist that became like the main therapist we worked with, it was really hard because that person also, you know, she was really honest with us that she had never done this. She was like, she had worked in like with a lot of families and romantic couples to like repair, you know, like bonds that were broken, but she had never worked with a pair of friends. And so I think she was up for the challenge. And it was a really, you know, it's still like a strange process to talk about, because I think that, you know, like I can say that for myself, I did not go into that process feeling that it would be, restorative. I was very much believing that, you know, we were going to go in and finally have enough information to know what was wrong with the other person. But I truly did not believe that our friendship would survive that, because it does feel like the nuclear option to, you know, to seek that kind of help. But I think that we came out of it both like really learning so much about ourselves and about patterns in our friendship that we were just really completely oblivious to.
Anne, did you want to add anything before I ask my next question?
No, I mean, I think that, you know, when I think about that experience of going to therapy, I think about it being a lot about undoing different stories we had told ourselves, and in some cases each other. And so it was sort of about admitting to the assumptions we'd made about each other during the periods when we were not in good communication, and sort of like checking those against reality. It was also, you know, undoing this story we had told ourselves from the very beginning of our friendship, that we were so much alike. And I think that this is true of all people. You become friends with people who you feel like you have something in common with, you know, not because they feel different from you in every single way. And so for us, that was also part of the therapy process of saying like, oh, wow, we are really different people. And here are some of the specific ways we are different. And this is why we cannot assume the other person is reacting in a way that we might react to something like this. It sounds very 101. I am like, you know, when I say it out loud, it's like, of course, like we are obviously two different people. But yeah, but undoing some of these narratives that we both had was really, I think, the most powerful thing about it.
I have a couple of things that came up for me when you guys were just talking. One is the idea that, right, so we don't have repair scripts, I think is how you phrase it, Aminatou. We don't have repair scripts for a friendship either. And it strikes me that going to therapy is sort of taking a repair script from a romantic relationship and like putting it on a friendship. To what degree do you think that like taking some of the scripts we do have for other kinds of relationship and applying them to friendship works versus is not quite right for this different kind of relationship?
I mean, I think that the script of therapy works both in romantic relationships, but also like parental relationships in general. So for that alone, you know, I think that is, while it is not accessible and affordable to everyone, I think that it is still like a valid, it is like a valid kind of help to seek, because, you know, like we had always told each other, you know, in explicitly and implicitly that we are each other's chosen family. And, you know, and everyone always focuses on the, you know, on the word like chosen, but the real truth is that if you say that you're a chosen family, then welcome to family dynamics. And this is how it goes. Like, this is how no family is untouched by complication. And so I do think that it is really worth like thinking about, you know, the values and the weight and the importance that some of these other just more recognized relationships have when you engage in something like big friendship, because a lot of the hallmarks are the same. You know, I think that it's true that we are not from the same family of origin, or that we don't have a romantic interest in each other, but we certainly have created a community together and are part of the same community and have an intention to know each other for a long time, you know, and we do act like a family unit. And so for that alone, I think that it like, for me, like the thing that really comes up is instead of, you know, like offsetting all of these relationships, like they're all in opposition to each other, is really understanding that, oh, like adults can actually form any kind of bond they want with someone else. And that the traditional family script or the traditional romantic script actually is kind of a scam, and that you can decide for yourself how you want to organize your life and who the most important person in your life is and how you want to live. And that doesn't have to be sanctioned by the state or by the weird traditions that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to get back to that in a minute, but I realize we've been talking a good amount about you guys as collaborators, and just to make sure that like everybody is kind of up to speed. I think Suzanne mentioned this briefly in her intro, but you guys work together on a podcast called Call Your Girlfriend, and obviously you wrote this book. And to a degree, in both of those things, your friendship is, if not the product, like on display within the work. So that's obviously like kind of complicating when you're going through a rough patch. So I'm curious if you could just tell us a little bit about that, and A, how the collaboration goes in good times, and then B, maybe how it went when things were not going so well.
Yeah, so we started the podcast with our friend, who is now our producer, Gina Delvac. And so there are three of us in that project, even though the two of us are the voices that are on the show. And it started out not as like a business, but as like a fun thing we were just going to learn how to do. Like, we just wanted to learn how to make audio, and Gina had this expertise and she was going to show us, and we were going to do this fun thing. And I will say that, like, yes, the show's a conversation between the two of us. And so in that way, our friendship is centered, but I don't think we really thought about it, first of all, as such like a public thing we were making. We really were like, let's do a fun thing and maybe our friends will listen. And then also, I don't think we really anticipated the degree to which our relationship would be something listeners were so invested in, which I know it sounds silly to say that, but you know, and while we do talk about friendship, the gist of the show has never been like, okay, let's really talk about everything that's going on in your emotional life and my emotional life. You know, it feels very different than the substance of the conversations we have when the microphones are not on, or the conversations we have with our other friends. You know, we're talking about things that are happening out in the world. And so, you know, when it became clear that like a lot of strangers listen to the podcast and people who don't know us do have ideas about our friendship, that was kind of weird. I think this also sort of happened at a period when things were not coincided with that period when things were not great with us. And I think, you know, we were not talking about it with each other, which is also funny because, you know, we are the two people who were experiencing that. And yeah, and so, you know, that's one layer of it. But then there's also this layer of showing up with Gina to do the work of making the podcast. And on that level, I think, you know, we have always really, really respected each other. We've always really been interested in each other's ideas. And so showing up to do the work part of the podcast felt pretty easy, like even when things were not great between us. I think we have always both been very committed to each other and to Gina to show up. And really, you know, writing the book, I think is in part, you know, motivated, or was in part motivated by this gap between how people perceived our friendship and friendships in general as being like easy all the time. But also for us was just like a way to go deeper into each other's ideas and to gain a better understanding for us of what had happened between us. And I think that it is, I don't know, I feel a little bit defensive. I think sometimes people like on various book events, people have asked a variation of the question, like, but wasn't it in your financial interest to save your friendship or something like that? which is like, the cost of therapy versus what you earn doing a podcast. I'm like, that math does not work at all. But it's really, there are just a bunch of different layers there. There's the public perception of our friendship, there's the working collaborative relationship we have, there is the emotional connection we have that is separate from both of those things. And the truth is we are in relationship with each other in all these ways that are not, contradictory or exclusive.
Yeah, I think, that's one of the things that I've appreciated talking to you guys, and also appreciated in the book, is that it is getting into the complexity of friendship, like the good things and the bad things and the rough patches and the work that you go through it. And something that often really dissatisfies me about the way that friendships, and women's friendships in particular, are portrayed in literature and pop culture is they're sort of like situated on one of two extremes a lot of the time. So either it's just like happy, joy, like 100% supportive all the time, like, isn't this so wonderful? Or on the other hand, it's like, well, this one is going to show you a raw and real portrayal of women's friendships because it's so toxic and dysfunctional and obsessive and whatever else. So it feels rare to me to have something that is like, that feels grounded in the reality of how friendships actually work, which is neither of those things in my experience. So I'm curious if those extremes are something that you have noticed as well, or what you think is missing maybe from the cultural conversation around friendship.
That's such a good question. I think, I think that you are correct about the extremes. And I think specifically in like literature, but probably mostly on television, that is the portrayal. It's always just like, are these people actually friends? Or, what is this weird fake friendship where there is only a highlight reel? And I think that the overcorrection now is probably because I think that we're agreed as a society that women can be friends and they're not just like catty bitches all the time to each other or whatever. And so I think that there tends to be an overcorrection towards that. And that's what the highlight, montages, the very much like, there's a special place in women for, like, there's a special place in hell for women who are bad to other women. But, I think that part of why we do our podcast and part of why we wanted to write this book, or even that we are fascinated to talk about friendship in general, is that we just know that those two extremes are, they're not true for us, and they're certainly not true for a lot of the other people that we know. Like, we have always known people to have deep, enriching, complex kind of relationships that also change, I think, significantly as you get older, and so I don't think that there's, like, we could have not written this book if we were not, like, where we are in our friendship, but also, like, if we had not gone through all of the life events that we have gone through in general. I think that there's something about being like in your mid 30s and and kind of being like, okay, great, I'm not a child, but no one can really trust me with too many responsibilities that make you see this whole thing differently. And I think I like you, I'm very hungry for different kinds of portrayals of friendship. Like, as we were writing our book, we grounded the story, obviously, like, the specifics are that it is about our friendship, but we really wanted to write something that was recognizable and relatable for a lot of people, and we really wanted to start a conversation, asking other people how they are doing friendship, because I think that the more of these different kinds of portrayals that we have, the better all of us are. Anne and I have had a lot of different experiences in our friendship, but we have certainly not had all of them. And I would be like very curious to see, because there is such a like hunger and I think availability of like female friendships specifically in pop culture right now. I would like to see more portrayals of friendship that are not, just between two women, and or friendships that are not, from two people who have our kind of same socioeconomic background and all of those things, because I think that part of what is hard about the hard things that are hard in friendship is that there are not really a lot of resources that you can access to say like, oh, okay, great, like here's how other people are doing them, here is a model for like how it goes when it goes well or how it goes when it goes badly. And it ends up being this like very intense private sphere that you have, and there's so much shame that's related to talking about when it's not going well, which, again, not to always map it onto other forms of relationship, but I think that, if you're like the parent of a child or you are in a marriage and you say, and someone asks you, how is it going? And you say, oh, it's really tough right now. People kind of understand what you mean, or there's like emotional leeway that is given there, but that is not true when you say that things are tough with your friend. Everyone is kind of like, okay, great. Like when are you dropping each other and what's the next step here? And there's not really, there is not really a cultural expectations that is a relationship you have to fight for.
Yeah. It occurs to me that in some sense, perhaps what we're overcorrecting for is Gossip Girl.
Yes, always, for the rest of my life.
Not you specifically, but we as a culture are paying for the sins of Gossip Girl. So this is my really out there question, so be ready. But I feel like the story of your book is almost like the classic hero's journey structure, but like the hero's journey of a friendship. So for those who don't know, really quick, like the hero's journey is this very classic like narrative structure, like in the Odyssey, and you find it in all kinds of things, where like the hero has this call to action, he leaves home, he goes on a lengthy quest, he faces different challenges, and then he comes home and he's not the same person he was when he left. And so I feel like the story of Anne and Aminatou, to a degree, right, is like you feel this call to work together, you make things together, things get rocky, you work to overcome those challenges, and then the friendship survives those challenges, but maybe it's not the same friendship it once was when it comes home. I told you it was out there. But the point I'm coming to is now you're kind of in that last stage of the hero's journey, which is coming home and what happens after the trials and the victory. And I'm curious to hear, what is that like? Like, what's the new normal? Yeah.
Oh, the trials and the victory.
Yeah, I'm like, where is the victory?
I mean, it doesn't sound out there in the sense that I don't think you can really come out of any major life experience and like fixing, like, really taking a hard look at our friendship and deciding we still want to be in it is like, a very formative and very important life experience for both of us. You can't come out the other side of a big experience like that unchanged. And, one thing that we really go out of our way to acknowledge is that when either person in a friendship experiences a big shift, they move, or they come out, or they enter a romantic relationship, or they leave it, or they become a parent, or they have switch careers, or whatever big thing is going to affect your day to day, you are different, and therefore the friendship is different. And I think that for us, I like that you appreciate the fact that we are honest about the fact that our friendship is not the same as it was at in chapter 1 when we first met, when we were still watching Gossip Girl. But certain early readers of this book, I'm thinking of one editor in particular, was like, I need some more happy stuff at the end. Like, I need to feel like, you're back where you started. And it's like, no, we aren't back where we started. We went a different place, that hero's journey is sometimes depicted like a circle. Like, you'll see people diagram it out like a circle, which always drives me crazy, because the whole point is like, you're changed, you're not back where you started. And I really think that friendship is exciting and transformative that way. Like a good friendship should be different after a decade has gone by, and you should be a different person because you have been in that friendship. Like, that's how it is a big friendship, and it is really important because it's changing you and you are changing within it.
I think that was one of the most significant insights from therapy, was really that of, even if you don't have any kind of big transformation happening, we are literally two different people than, you know, the people that met 10 years ago. And I think that it, you know, that is not something that we acknowledge all the time. And I think that there's, you know, for me, ultimately, there was so much more comfort in that. It was like, great, like, you know, the 30-something-year-old versions of ourselves want to be friends. I want the 70-year-old versions of ourselves to want to be friends. And those people will also be different, you know, and I think that that is, instead of being scared of the transformation that's happening in both people, it actually feels so much more significant, and it feels good to know, like, okay, we are evolving at the same time. And I think that you give each other a little bit of grace when you also realize that that is what is going on. You don't need some sort of like ginormous life event for just, you know, I'm like, we are changing people all the time, and accounting for that, I think, you know, it gives you enough to like go on, because I would like that same kind of grace extended to me as I go through like everything that I'm going through.
Thank you for entertaining the hero's journey question. So I think we only have a couple minutes before Q&A, but the last thing I wanted to make sure to get to, so I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, right, with what friendships are recognized, or what kinds of relationships are recognized legally, and how we structure these things. And I'm curious, you know, the series is called Reimagining the World Together. And so what role do you think that friendship has in reimagining a new world where people can, as you put it, just like do what they want with their relationships and build them how they want to?
Ugh. Adults making adult choices about who they want to do what with. And like, I don't even mean that. I feel like that sounds like I'm just talking about like sex euphemistically, but like really I'm talking about like, you know, do you want to buy a house with a friend instead of, you know, a romantic partner? Do you want to have a friend be your point of contact on all your medical forms? Do you want to raise children with a friend instead of, you know, thinking that you have to be, you know, romantically partnered or married, and do it with that person, or do it embedded within your family of origin? I think like, you know, for us, really respecting friendship and everything it can be also means like just having the option there, you know, like saying like, okay, like who really is the most important person to you, and what do you want to do with them? Like, how do you want to build your life with them? And really having that full range of options available, as opposed to, you know, right now where I think that there are still some pretty like fixed ideas about, okay, what does a romantic partner do with you? Like, what role do they fill in your life? What does a family do with or for you, your family of origin, and how do they slot in? And I think that you want to offer the option. Like friendship, you know, if you feel so inclined with a friend, like, you know, do it. And I think that, you know, I don't have like an across the board, like this is what the laws look like everywhere, but you know, in some ways it's not only about the law, it's about what's normalized and what we all consider to be options for us. It's about the culture. And I think that's also part of our goal with the book. Like, we talk about it so that more people talk about it, so that it becomes not a weird idea that you might want to do, like embed your life more formally with one of your friends.
Yeah. Adults making adult decisions about who they want to do what with. That's our catchphrase. That's our takeaway. I am going to go to a few questions from the audience. Thank you guys for submitting these. The first question is, how do your families view your friendship and the lengths that you guys have gone to preserve it?
Ah, that's such a good question. Like, my family is this has been like very interesting for me. They like fully know who Anne is. Like, that she's the only friend that they ask about regularly, and it always cracks me up because she is not my friend that they have known the longest. But in the, you know, in the order, in their minds, like the order of operation of like, what do we ask about when we talk to you? Like, who is doing how? Like, Anna's always consistently at the top of that list. And that makes me really happy, because I think like I come from a pretty like conservative and traditional family background, and you know, and that to me feels like a really big cultural shift of like, okay, like when they think about like who is important in my life and who to ask about, the fact that like my father knows to do that, that makes me feel like very hopeful about the future and a lot of other things.
Yeah, and I also come from a different kind of, but like a conservative family background, and I do notice that like it's very interesting. My parents have respect for friends for the longer I've known someone, the more that they're like, okay, this is real now. You know, like when I when I was younger, they would be like, oh, who is this new friend? They're always skeptical of new friends, but you know, like my mom sends Aminatou care packages. Like they are very much like, you know, they understand, I think, the degree of importance that this friendship holds for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Conversely, I feel like in big friendships, it's always nice to get to know the other person's family too, because then you see like where they come from and all these facets of them. So I feel like it goes both ways. Next question. How do you think female-female big friendships are different from female-male or male-male big friendships?
Wow, a question for the ages. Maybe someone should teach a class about that at Duke.
Is there a gender studies department?
Yeah, I'm like, I would love to take that class. You know, that's interesting. I think it always like makes me really uncomfortable to have this conversation only like in a binary, because, you know, on one hand it's kind of lazy, and on the other hand it's also just like lacks a lot of imagination. But I think that it is fair to say that you know, all different configurations of friendships are like very, very, very different. I think that what I know about like being in female-female friendships is that there is definitely more of a vocabulary and of you know, like an ability to just talk about being in that friendship, you know, for both parties, because you know, and some of that is generally like that is very, very, very good. But I also think that some of it comes from, you know, like a very gendered kind of place, like, oh, these women and their emotions, like they're able to access them, tell me more. And, you know, so that aspect of it makes me a little sad. I will say that like anecdotally, hearing from my male friends who have read this book, everyone like you know, like there's always like a very cute complaint, but not complaint, about how they're like, well, yeah, I feel that too, or I have that too, or you and I share the same thing. And so it makes me like hopeful, you know, that like, okay, someone else can write the book of like, how can men and women be friends? And it's not some, you know, like bullshit, like How Harry Met Sally, you know, like kind of exploration. But I don't know. I think I am just like very ready to live in a world where we have this conversation, not just along a gender binary, and really, you know, give all kinds of people an opportunity to really express what their friendships mean to them, because no two friendship is the same. And that is true for even friendships between women.
Next question. How do you know which friendships are worth fighting for, especially given that the cultural expectation is not to fight for any friendship that has to be fought for?
Writing this section of the book was so hard. For a long time, I don't know if you remember this, we had like a space where it was like, why did we want to stay in the friendship? Or like, how can you tell? That was like a place where it was like, this is where the paragraph will go. But like it really, I think it's a hard thing to articulate. And you know, it sort of goes back to the conversations about what we were hoping to get out of therapy. I think for us, at a certain point, we had this checklist of things, right? We were collaborators, so we were connected beyond the friendship. We had a bunch of people in common, so we had this whole social context for our friendship as well. We had been friends through very formative life phases, and so it felt not just like losing, you know, losing a person, but like losing a witness, like someone who had really seen us through a lot of parts of our life. And I mean, I know this is not like a list of criteria or like a direct answer to like, how do you, total stranger, figure out whether you want to save a friendship? But like, I say that because I think, you know, we both considered probably in different ways and at different moments, all of those things. And, one thing that expert type people who we talked to told us was that, it's worse to realize later, like, oh, I wish I had tried a little harder, or I wish I just asked about that directly. Friendship and the lack of support for it makes it kind of easy to duck that question and just say, well, if I have a question about it, it probably means the answer is no. And I think that, what would happen if you just tried to articulate, like, this doesn't feel like this friendship is really working for me in the way it used to. Do you feel that too? Like, or, something that feels like, risky, but actually inviting the conversation. Because I think you can also tell a lot about the future of a friendship by how someone responds to that. When we tried to have those early clumsy conversations, we were both clearly like, oh yeah, this is a problem. We weren't like, what are you talking about? Like, it's fine. And I think if just one of us had said, oh, I don't really care, like, the friendship would be over. You need both people to really want to invest, and to find out whether your friend is interested in staying in the friendship with you. Like, you're probably going to have to ask, and then from there, it's not like it's easy, but like, that vocalizing the fact that you have sense that there is a distance there is a first step, a necessary first step.
Yeah. So this person asks, would you say that you can truly have multiple big friendships, or is big friendship a relationship that stays with one specific person, or that you have room for with one person?
Such a good question to ask. I think that it's fair to say that we believe that you can have this relationship with a lot of people. We both have, like, very, like, multiple very significant people that we're in this kind of relationship with. And I think that's something that is really nice about knowing someone for this long, is that then you get to know those people as well. We always say that we have very, we treat the other person's big friends like our in-laws. You, like, stay on top of what they're doing, you check in with them, you generally know, like, what's going on in their orbit, and there's no pressure for them to be like your super close friend. But I just think that it's true that for some people, like, they have one significant friendship and that carries them for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just know that, in the same way that we say that your romantic partner or your family cannot be your everything, like, one friend also cannot be your everything, and different friends unlock different things in you. And I think that it's exciting to know that you can be known, like, so well by different kinds of people, and have different relationships with all of them.
Yeah. This person asks, having spent many years in a long distance friendship, what advice would you give to friends who are struggling to maintain their relationship because of the pandemic? Do you have ideas for cultivating rituals or keeping friendships close during socially distant times?
We are long distance friends right now in a whole new way because normally we get to see each other, every couple of weeks or months, and we have not. So this question resonates. I think that, one piece of advice is to tell your friend that you want the friendship to survive the pandemic, that you are recognizing that something has shifted in how you are able to see each other or how you're able to spend time together. And just say that, like, you want to come out the other side of this thing still being friends. Like, that really goes a long way. I think that for us, also finding your own ritual within that distance. In our really early days of being long distance friends, we would, message back and forth an actual agenda, like the things that we wanted to talk about when we had a chance to catch up face to face. And it was this way to say, like, oh, I'm thinking about you, and remind me, I got to tell you the story about whatever, or, have you listened to this new album? We need to talk about it, or whatever it was. And being able to just do that slight nudge, like, I'm thinking of you in real time, even if we do not have, the space to catch up for hours and hours right now, like, remind me, we need to come back to this, or like, here's one funny thing I saw that reminded me of you. I think those things can go a long way. And then the last little piece of advice comes from our friend Dio, who is the friend who introduced us, the mutual, who invited us to watch Gossip Girl. She has this great bit of advice where when you catch up with someone, or, you know, you talk to someone, a friend you haven't maybe spoken to in a while, instead of trying to do the full recap of like every single thing that has happened to you since you've spoken, just talk about where you are right now. Just say like, here's what this week has been for me. And that can really take the pressure off of feeling like, oh gosh, where do I even begin? It's been so long since we've spoken. And I love that advice too, because normally then in explaining what's up with your week, you have to backtrack and say like, oh yeah, like let me tell you a little bit about this other thing that's been going on. So that is some good long distance advice, I think too, that we've adopted from a friend of ours.
This next one is a tough one. This person says I've struggled a lot with the way some of my friends have been acting during quarantine, how irresponsible they are with putting others at risk. Do you think this time is exposing people's true colors, or should we be forgiving of people's actions?
Well, I mean, that is a good question. I'm just like shuddering at people who are being like acting badly in a pandemic. That is driving me a little nuts. I don't know that, you know, this time more than any time exposes people's true colors. I think that you just get to see how people are in a different context. Like, welcome to the pandemic. Here's how some people are. You know, and to the question of like, is it a friendship that is, you know, worth saving or not? You only know that by having a conversation with that person. You know, I think that my gut instinct when someone does something that I don't like now is to just ask them about it. Because I think that the answers that you get in that conversation tell you more than just this moment, you know, because this is how all relationships are. If you are explicitly saying to your friend, hi, it makes me uncomfortable how you are acting right now, or you know, like I do not feel safe like spending time with you in the pandemic because of XYZ. And their first instinct is not to say like, oh, tell me more about that, or how can we reach a consensus where we're both happy. I think you know where this friendship is heading. It's all, you know, this is how you troubleshoot in any kind of configuration. Like you both like say the thing that you feel, and then you get more information about whether this is someone you want to work with or not work with. And I think that the thing that the pandemic is doing for most people that I am noticing is that it is just like increasing that tendency of making assumptions out of people's actions, specifically on social media. You know, I think that unless you are there with someone and you have all of the context, even if someone looks like they're doing something that you don't approve of, the truth is that like you truly do not have the whole story. So I would start with asking them, you know, it's like, oh, like, tell me why you feel comfortable doing this, or do you feel that you're taking the appropriate precautions, and having a conversation about that should guide whether you still want to be friends with that person or not. Because I think that at the heart of this question really is it is about values, and the only way to know if your values aligned with someone is to like really drill down on that, and not just to assume based on a couple of things that you have seen or things that you are perceiving.
I'm going to paraphrase this one a little bit. So I think this is a question about kind of a friendship fade out as opposed to a breakup. So they're wondering what you do when maybe a friend is drifting away from you because of a big life event like going to college or graduating college and being physically distant from each other. How would you approach that situation?
That's really painful. I mean, it's interesting because I think sometimes there's a tendency to think about like a friendship slow fade out as somehow less painful than like a breakup, which is really definitive. But you know, usually a friendship fade out is not happening both ways co-equally. Like there's usually like this scenario, like one person is like, oh gosh, like it feels like you're retreating from me. It does not feel like we're walking away from each other. And so you know, we're a little bit of like a broken record on this front, but like, you know, raising the issue and saying that like, you know, you recognize what's going on, like that this change is happening in your friend's life, or that the circumstances of your friendship have changed, and and saying what you want, which is like, if you want to still be friends, saying like, I want to figure out like what our friendship looks like now that this big change, like, you know, is here, like we're in a different set of circumstances. You know, I think that you don't have to both be feeling the same way about it, but you know, much like the previous scenario, how your friend reacts to you saying like, I'm feeling this distance and I don't love it, I want to figure out how to stay friends, will tell you a lot about whether you are going to be able to have a friendship moving forward. And it really is something that you cannot do alone. You can't just unilaterally decide that you want to stay friends with someone and stay friends with someone, you know, like friendship is a two-person thing. So being able to acknowledge it, and then if you can, say what you want to happen. Say if you even know the details about like how often you'd like to talk to them, or like what might make you feel more you know, safe in that friendship. I think that's also a really great thing to reflect on. You know, we use a lot of metaphors like fading away or moving away from, and sometimes it's literal, like someone has literally moved away, but most of the time you're trying to describe an emotional distance. And so I think for me, you know, it can sometimes be helpful to say like, what am I actually missing here? Or like, what am I actually asking for from my friend?
This person is wondering about the pros and cons of being creative collaborators and friends, and asks, is there a danger to mixing big friendship with a professional relationship?
A very good question. I will say, speaking strictly for myself, there are only pros to working with your friends, but that, again, that is my, because some of it really is your own personality. I find it hard to, like, honestly, be 100% accountable and amazing unless I just have a baseline of liking the people I work with. If I work with strangers, I'm like, you get what you get. But if I work with my friends, I'm like, I will be my A+ self every day here. You know, I think that whenever I hear this question, the thing that I always want to challenge is that, you know, you cannot work with all of your friends. Like, I have very good, you know, very close, significant friends where there's not enough money in the world to ever make us work together because we are just not aligned in the way that we could work. So it is true that you cannot work with everyone that you're friends with. The reason that it really works in our collaboration is because really early on, and in our collaboration with Gina as well, that we host the podcast with, is that really early on, we were able to demonstrate to each other before any of the things that we were doing were work or we were getting paid to do anything together, we were able to show to each other that we were people who were really reliable, you know, and we were reliable in the ways that each person needed to feel like assuaged. And so, you know, Gina always jokes that we are the 3 people in high school that we would do the group projects for everyone. So it was really nice to find each other because we know that no one will drop a ball in that scenario. And, you know, so I think that like having a baseline of really knowing like what you need in a collaboration is really important, but also knowing how to like account for that or how to really check that you know, your collaborators can give that to you is something that is like definitely worthwhile. And we were able to do that, you know, by showing up every week to make a podcast that no one was really listening to or no one cared about. But for a year, we did that every single week as if it was a, you know, like a really good professional project. I just like do not agree with the fact that, you know, it's always bad to work with your friends. Like everything you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to communicate about it. And it is also true that you might only be able to work with them for one particular season of life. And that also makes it really worth it. I think that, you know, you should think like really deeply about what that collaboration does and why you want to enter into it, and you know, and what criteria for success is for everyone. But I do think that working with your friends generally is very rewarding because you just get to see a different dimension of them. You know, I know, like, I love knowing, like, on the days that, you know, maybe like Anne's not having like an amazing day off, you know, like in her real life, things are a little tough, and seeing the like professionalism and the, you know, just like how she still brings all of herself to work. That's something that's always been inspiring to me. Also knowing that like on the days where I just like cannot like clock in 100% that Anne and Gina, you know, have a system for being able to, you know, still work and make sure that things are still happening, and that there is that like that level of grace and forgiveness, and you don't always have to be on. You know, that to me, like those are only upsides.
This person asks, which kind of moments define a friendship more? Is it the big moments of conflict or decisive turning points, or is it the mundane activities that you do together every day in those small daily moments?
I think that all of that stuff matters just in different ways. And, you know, I mean, it was a really interesting exercise to look back jointly at our friendship and say like, okay, how did we get so close to each other? And the answer was a lot of mundane small stuff, and even moments that we write about in the book as being kind of an emotional turning point, or a place where we really like felt like we reached a new level of closeness to each other, don't come across as like a big deal. You know, they don't seem like, you know, there were no like cars on fire or like, you know, like dramatic, like, you know, moments. It was really just something clicking for one or both of us. And I think that the same is true when we talk about how our friendship broke down, you know, like a lot of little things going wrong. And, you know, that said, I think that I really do feel that showing up for friends in moments that they have identified as pivotal and important, you know, whether it is something positive or something that is really difficult that they're going through. You know, I think about showing up for friends who are grieving or who have lost someone really important to them as being really key, because you recognize that your friend is going through something that's really going to change them, and showing up and is a way that you indicate you want to be there on the other side of that change, or you want to be present for them in this process. And so, you know, I don't think it's an either or, like a little moments or big moments, but it is true that friendship is made up of a lot of little stuff that doesn't feel dramatic in real time. And it is also true that like how you show up as a friend in big moments really affects how you're able to continue to know each other in all your phases of life and as you change.
Our last question, a fun one. What is your favorite memory from your friendship?
Wow, asking me to choose between all the great memories.
Or just how about a favorite memory?
I mean, I will just say that I just miss, like all of the times that we would, like early on in our long distance relationship, where we would just like make time to be in the same city at the same time, you know, and that for us always involves like some, you know, it's like some sort of work trip is always in the background. But I think that some of the things that I think about a lot are just a lot of these like very mundane moments that we have when we're at a bar just eating French fries and catching up with each other, you know, or sitting on the same couch and doing the crossword and like complaining about Ross Douthat's columns to each other in the Times. You know, those, it's just like very small, like not, you know, it seems like very small and insignificant, but I think that all of those moments where you really feel like, oh yeah, this person is in like the very small moments of my life and you just like that they're there. I like, those are kind of the memories that I think about a lot.
Oh, I love this question because I immediately think of like the rom-com montage, you know, and my like rom-com Aminatou montage is like my shot from my perspective, looking at her on the other end of the couch, like through the years, you know what I mean? It's like just getting to know each other, and also like, you know, when things are maybe kind of awkward, and also like, you know, yeah, when we're traveling for work and spending time together, or I don't know, like there is something about comfortably sharing one piece of furniture with a person you love that I don't know, like that is what comes to mind for me. It's funny how this relates to that last question about like, is it little or big moments? I really feel very emotional about this question. But yeah, same couch is my answer.
Perfect. A perfect note to end on because we're all sitting on our couches most likely. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for chatting. This was amazing. Next Thursday at 5:15 again, the Duke is having conversation with Bree Newsom Bass and Gina Newsom Duncan. And that's it for me.